All right, going live here for the first time on YouTube, and get this dialed in a little bit, get some people coming. We're doing a live farm Q&A, so I'm gonna get the Instagram going here, and we'll get started. All right, everybody, going live here, just doing the farm Q&A. So we had quite a few questions come in. I know I've been pretty bad about being consistent on these lives and just getting you guys lots of content, but it's something that I know you guys are seeing more and more of. So it's exciting. Just be patient with me. I'll be more consistent, I promise. But live Q&A, that's what we're doing right now. And I got some questions right here that you guys have put in. Also, we're on YouTube. And just to give a shout out to kind of what's going on in our world, we do have quite a few videos on YouTube about farming, things that I've put out. We will be putting out more videos and whatnot. It's a big mission of mine to be able to just kind of show you guys everything that I've learned along the way. There's such a deep connection with how we grow food, understanding how food's grown, and understanding nutrition, how that's all interconnected. It's so important. It's so one and the same. And I feel like a lot of times when we get into health and wellness, we get overwhelmed with so much information. And there's just some things that we can all fundamentally start to try to understand and try to work through, try to read, try to basically just bring into our field and try to absorb. And then things start clicking in a new way, and you start looking at things in a new way. And all of a sudden, you don't really need to take someone else's advice. Like you basically get this, you get fortified with this knowledge, and this knowledge gives you the ability to be able to make discernment and to make the correct choices for yourself, and to know like what's going to be better for you and your family and nutritionally. And to me, that's so important, because I think so many of us, and I'm right, been like this for many years. I just didn't know. And I was always kind of confused on what should I do? What should I not do? And that sucks. It's like trying to get your health to where you want it to be. And it's like trial and error. And I know it's a journey and it's all a process. And we're supposed to like really just, be at one with that and know that that's where all the gems come. But I just kind of like really want to start to give this information about farming, so you can like bypass all those years that I went through all that garbage, and through that create a liberation, so that you feel bona fide in your stance, in your own decisions, and you have kind of like this spidey sense or sixth sense in knowing, what's right and what's not, what you should be putting in your body, what you should not be putting in your body, and really the ins and outs of it all. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. So one of the first questions that I received, and actually when we received these questions, I put them in order. So I tried to put these in order so it like kind of trickles and flows together, because I know I can go on rants, but I wanted these rants to flow inside themselves and like be interconnected, and just like our logo, right? Just like the circle, right? Just like we're all kind of flowing through. So the first question: how would you approach addressing restoring soil on newly bought property? So say you're just getting started, what's the first thing you should do? Well, first thing you should do is decide like, what can you actually handle? And a lot of times people go in and they want to do a massive garden. And if it's just growing food for you and your family, maybe there's like, mom and a dad and maybe 2 kids, you actually need a tiny, tiny amount of space. So my number one suggestion would be like, you've got to plan out what you're going to do on your property. So, and I would always say with that, phase it. So have like, if you have a big vision and you want to go gnarly like I did, then phase it out. Because if you don't, you're going to quit and you're going to hit speed bumps. And I'm just telling you that from experience. I'm just going to try to find something right quick. And I don't know where it's at. Here it is. So part of what I did is I drew out my property. Okay. So I drew out my property on this little, and actually a permaculture guy did this with me and showed me, Baba John, and it was so powerful because what we did is we drew out everything. We literally mapped where everything went. And just so you guys know, this is not, we did this, things change, but we mapped everything out. We zoned everything out. We phased everything out. And it really brought a massive peace of mind to the project. So I know that we've got a lot going on back there. You might not want to go that intense. It could be on a piece of paper. It could be on a napkin. Just draw it out, even if it's small scale. That's going to be step one. If you want to go big, be realistic, phase it out. And I'm not going to go into super details in that because I've got a lot of questions and I don't even want to be on here for an hour because I've got a lot of other stuff I've got to knock out with this greenhouse and just other things I do for Crucial 4. And if you guys want to ask any questions, feel free to ask questions. I might be able to get to them. If not, then they'll go on the next live. So phase it out, get it phased out. Now, when it actually comes to assessing, the first thing you want to do is you want to be able to understand what type of soil do you have. Do you have a super like sandy soil, clay, rocky, and so on. And you can Google this, you can look stuff up. But basically it's a water test. You take your soil, you throw it in water, you let it set, and that'll tell you how much silt's in there, how much sand in there, how much clay is in there. Those three attributes are kind of really what dictate the soil structure and makeup of your native soil. And then from that, that'll really help you determine like, what do I do next? Because like in my instance, I had a lot of clay. So there wasn't a ton of organic matter, but it's just clay. So it's like roots don't want to go through that. It's not aerated. So I need to build like loam, right? And I got a question here about what's my favorite books about farming? And I'm going to go into that question. But as I answer these questions, again, I want this to all connect. I want to share knowledge that you guys could pick up easily to identify that for yourself. This was a book that I got in college, and I freaking love it. It's called Soils and the Environment. And that's it. And I got this in soil biology. And I love this book because it really lays down the foundation of soil. And it really kind of breaks down like the loam and the sand and just everything that makes soil, or dirt, which is an interesting topic. And so if you want that knowledge, that's there, right? But it really kind of helped me get a really solid foundation in soil science, a little bit of agronomy, mainly soil biology, structure, because the structure of soil is important. So I was on clay. So I needed to build something on top of my soil that would break the clay down, right? So I could have more of like a loam, because I want it to be loamy. You know what I mean? Like imagine going to a forest, right? And say if you've ever been up to Oregon or in NorCal, you're walking in that forest floor, any forest floor, and it's like a sponge, right? So it's got air, it's got these pockets inside of it, it's spongy. That's what we want to create. So depending upon what you're starting with, that's the end goal. So in my instance, I had clay. And with clay, you want to add sand, right? To help break that up, small sand particles. But what I did before I added sand is I just dumped a ton of mulch, tree mulch. So tree barks that were mulched up. Because there's tree companies that break down trees for people, cut down trees for people. They mulch it all out, right? Well, what do they do with that? Well, they have to go to the dump and pay the dump to dump it. So they have to pay someone to get rid of that stuff. Well, these guys were right down the road. I stopped my truck, had my mother-in-law with me. They're like, oh my God, here we go. And just talked to the guy and was like, hey, you got to go pay to dump that mulch? He's like, yes. I was like, well, they're not charging at my address, which I'm not going to give out right here. But I said my address. And he's like, oh, sweet, you're right there. I was like, yeah. So that's what I did. And what that started to do is it started to bring in organic matter, started to cover up the soil. A lot of times we just have grass. There's not a lot of diverse vegetation. A lot of people also, have weeds, or what I call bioindicators. They're not weeds. Weeds have this connotation to them, not that they're a pest or they're a nuisance. And a lot of what we have around us is dandelion. That's an herb. Like, that's great for the kidney. Like the root, the leaf, the flower. So it's interesting how we've looked at lawn management and then when you start to like look at farming and starting to get into the whole big picture of things. But ideally, those weeds, and I'm going on a little tangent here, are bioindicating what minerals are abundant in the soil. And that's badass, because all you got to do is go out and look, and you can see what's going on if you know what those herbs are basically indicating by why they're there, why they're growing in abundance. And that's just naturally happening. So that's gnarly, right? So anyways, I threw mulch on top of my soil. That started to create organic matter, started to get the mycelium. The mushrooms love the wood chips. But then we also added sand, and we also added shale, which is actually like super compressed clay, believe it or not, but it's like a little bit bigger screened rock, basically. And we also add lots of zeolites. So I'm getting that clay to break up. And so initially when you go in, you want to think about, how do I get the right structure? And how do I make that happen? If you're going to do a raised bed and you're or grow in a container, then you don't really need to worry about this so much. You do need to make sure your structure's right, but you're going to probably go buy some bag soil. And as you guys know, any bag soil you ever bought is not clay, right? It's got a lot of perlite in it, which I don't like. Perlite's terrible for the waterways, but it's loamy. It's real spongy. You can dig your hand in it. You can squeeze it. And when you let your hand out, it'll somewhat be together, but if you just touch it like that, it all breaks out. Whereas in clay, you can never do that, right? So structure is kind of one of the number one things you're going to be looking at. The second thing, which is going to answer Brandon's question, is because also the question was asked how to restore the soil. And this is like where the second part comes in. You got to test the soil. And everyone's going to tell you, oh, just send you down there, a soil sample down to your university. I'm in Texas, so that's how they talk. That's how the farmers around here talk. And and you can, and it's free. In Texas A&M, you can send a soil sample. You can call those people up. They'll tell you what fertilizer to use. They'll tell you everything, and for free, right? It's interesting, though, because that soil test is wrong. It's not the one you want to do. There was a guy, his name was William Albrecht, the genius, and he figured out the solution to all this. But he was alive and thriving in his peak when post-World War II. So right after we're done bombing people and killing all these people, my wife's Laos, so it's like kind of like crazy to hear her talk about all the bombs that got dropped on our country from the U.S. They just dropped a ton of bombs on Laos because they just needed to get rid of them. Like we weren't even at war with Laos. It's fucking nuts. It really rubs me sideways. But at the end of the day, post-World War II, we had all this materials left over that were making bombs and Agent Orange. Well, they switched the labels on it. They're like, we got to sell this to the agricultural industry. We can start destroying the food because now we're not at war, but we're not killing all the people now. Now we got to feed them crappy so we can kill them that way. I know that might be a conspiracy, but whatever. It's there. And at the end of the day, this guy was speaking against it, William Albrecht. And this book this book is not by William Albrecht, but it's basically all his work. And it's a book that I highly recommend. It's got a lot of science in it, but I feel like this is something we all need to know, like inherently, like just like you know how to tie your shoe, you need to know about this. And the reason why is because our food quality is so crappy, guys. Like I wouldn't be pushing this on you because I'm into it, and I think that's important because I'm into it. No, this is something we all fundamentally need to understand. Because again, once you understand this stuff, Everything changes, and how you assess your nutrition and where you get your food from. It completely changes. All this crap, when you hear us talk about heirloom and wild, makes sense. It's like, oh, that's why. Oh, okay. Now I get it. Because most of the food that we get now that's organic is coming from California or Mexico or Chile, right? And they're not using any of these methods. They're using an old school method. So the method for testing that Albrecht kind of created is called it's an Albrecht test. And basically there's a few labs that do it. Logan Labs is the labs that I use. It's one of the best labs because it's cheap. And they do his test. And that's the test that I would go after, because most tests only test like NP and K. They're not really testing all these other trace elements and minerals. And that's what the Albrecht test, that's what Albrecht was all about. Is like, we got to get all those and analyzed and in the proper way. And there's all these schools of thought on how to actually analyze phosphorus and so on. So it can be confusing, but Logan Labs do the Albrecht testing. That's what you got to do. So once you get that back, you've figured out how to structure your soil. You figured out kind of what you need to add there. Because, adding sand and clay, or if you need to add clay, or shale, all these things, they don't really add nutrition back to the soil. I mean, they kind of do, like zeolites and sand do, but not to the level that you're going to need, especially when you get that test back. Like on my soil, I have too much calcium. A lot of people don't have enough. So I have to buffer that with magnesium. And these are just some nuances and situations I'm throwing in. And then you can decide, apply it to yours situation when you get your test back and see what you need to add. But almost all the soils are weak in certain trace elements. My soil happened to be super low in phosphorus and potassium, but mainly magnesium and sulfur. And the idea with it all is it's not just throw a bunch of minerals on, because you can't do that. When you understand the way this testing works, it's all about creating balance. And sometimes that takes years to do. It takes years to really get the soil mineral balance dialed in. Because if I was to say, okay, I need all this phosphorus, and I go dump as much phosphorus to get that measure up, I'm going to throw off my calcium, my magnesium ratios, my ability for the food web to digest it all. It's a ton of this phosphorus on top of it. So there's only so much of these minerals you can add per year to your soil. So depending upon how damaged your soil is, it just takes time to get it restored. And that's just the way it is. But within a super short period of time, I'm talking for like 4 to 5 years, you can have everything pretty much dialed in like perfectly. But that's the situation we're in, guys. And that's what we got to do. But we definitely have to add minerals back to the soil. And we have to test with the right test. And we have to be thinking about how to create structure. So that's the main things I would do besides planning and marketing out. So plan your space, mark it out, figure out kind of what you need to create structure. If you're doing a raised bed and you're buying a bunch of soil and throwing in, that's great. But you're going to create a stratification layer if you're going to go all the way into your native soil. What does that mean? Well, if you have a layer of like really good soil here, like for my example, and then it's just clay, and you just set that on top, it'll start to break up the clay. But it takes a long time. So if you're trying to actually rehab and restore your native soil, which was really what we need to be doing, instead of buying bagged soil, we shouldn't do that, because most of that bagged soil is peat moss. Like when you buy all that crap, you're buying like 70 or 80% peat moss. And there's a lot of people that say that's bad for the environment. It all comes from Canada. But yeah, either way, you're getting stuff from way far away and you're bringing it in. Now, I say that loosely, though, because, look, it's important that we grow our own food. And, we got to start somewhere. It is what it is, but I just want to lay it all out for you, because there are those solutions. Because we didn't do that on our property. We didn't buy bags, and we did raised bed structures. And I'll explain kind of what we did in this next kind of steps. But at the end of the day, that stratification layer can create issues. So you kind of have to go in, and this kind of addresses another question, so I'll be able to knock this question out too, is why is tilling the soil bad? Well, tilling the soil initially isn't that bad of an idea. especially if you need to incorporate all these things to create structure and get the minerals in. It's actually not a bad idea at all. I didn't do it initially because I was so sold on don't till. The idea is to not till every year and all the time. Like when you turn over a bed, don't just till it under. That's the idea. Don't do that. So if you need to get in there with a tiller or a rotary plow, do that. What we did is we used a broad fork. It's an aerator, just pokes holes in the soil. And you kind of pull it back, and then it opens up the soil. And we dumped all these things like the sand, the zeolites, the shale on the soil, compost. This is another thing that you can add to your soil. We actually get pretty damn good compost. Texas Pure, it's not the best, but they got rated like #1 compost in, or number like 5 compost in the nation. So it's not that bad. It's got a lot of trash in it. You got to screen it again. I'm not going to go into that. It's a pet peeve of mine. Or you can make your own, right? Which I'm going to go into that and that whole closed loop model. But look, guys, we blew out our model. And I know a lot of you guys, if you're getting started, this question, that person's ready. And so they, buying compost from someone like Texas Pure or your local compost company would be a pretty solid idea on top of the structure or whatnot, especially if you can't do the wood chips like I did, because the wood chips they take time. They take like a year. You just dump wood chips all over your property and you try planting that, it's not going to grow. There's all these people, and back to Eden method. If you guys ever heard of it, just take you some compost, or here's how he does it. Take you some cardboard, throw it on the ground, right? And then start making these layers and then put wood chips on top. I've done that. I did that for years. It takes still about a year for all that to really work. So this idea that you can just go out there and get in the soil and just plant and boom, everything's going to grow, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. I promise you. It's just not. It's better to go in there, when I'm finding out, go in there with the plow or a tiller and get all your stuff incorporated into the soil on top of it and till all that crap in. Okay? And if you really want to go above and beyond, you can actually tarp that soil first, like with just a tarp. And then you'll kill all that native grass. And then what will happen is all those weed seeds from down below will start to come up and start to sprout too. And then those will all die. And you pull that back, it's all just dead grass. Then add all your stuff. Then you can till it through. You don't have to do it that way. That's just a little extra measure. That's definitely something that I do. I like to use the tarps. People go, is there plastic on your field? I'm like, dude, it's on there for like 3 or 4 days and it's moved. So it doesn't sit on there forever, but it's in a phenomenal way to mimic a natural cycle in nature, especially it's almost like going into winter and the sun just gone, right? So you're just mimicking that. And then you just pull that plastic out after a week. In the summer, it takes 24 hours. It gets so dang hot in there. And the microbes love it. When you pull it back, you'll see bugs going everywhere, going crazy. They love it. It's because it's basically like a mulch layer for them. And the thing about it is you never want Mother Nature bare. Do you ever see Mother Nature with all her clothes out bare? No, she's always covered up, right? So we got to keep her covered up. We don't want bare soil, which is kind of another thing to go into. But those are the main things you should do to restore soil. And I'm not going to assess your situation. I know it's a long answer, answered some of the other questions here. But that's exactly what I would do. Try to keep it simple, because it's gonna take time. To think you're gonna go in and just go crazy. No, it takes time. So don't beat yourself up. Take your time. All right. So we went over testing for the minerals. I'm not gonna go into how do you assess that. That's a long thing. But if you use Logan, they'll tell you for free. If you use Logan Labs, they'll tell you what minerals to put and where to get them and all that stuff. Well, they won't tell you where to get them. They'll tell you which ones and what ratios that you need to put in the soil. There's an agronomist there that can do that. And no, I'm not signing up for that for you guys. I'm sorry. I can't. I don't have enough time or I would. But I can lead you guys enough on this path that you can really grab the bull by the horns and take it on. Because if you really want to grow food seriously, you're going to have to do that. If you want to grow a couple pots on the back of your porch, say you live in an apartment, then go buy some bag soil. Go get some good organic soil and throw some seeds in a pot and bring them in. I mean, we should all at least be growing herbs. we should all at least be growing herbs in our house all winter, all season, summer, because who doesn't want fresh oregano or fresh basil or fresh rosemary? That was something that my wife really noticed whenever we got together, how I always like to cook with fresh herbs. And she's like, man, it really does change the food taste and quality. And these herbs are medicine, man. Like, so oregano, you guys all know, like oregano is antiviral, antimicrobial, anti-parasitic. I mean, this stuff is amazing. So having it fresh, dosed into your diet, in your foods, in your cuisines, it's just such a beautiful way to experience these herbs. If you've got an acute condition, you need to go buy a $40 or $30 bottle of some wild oregano oil. This stuff's not cheap. You got to take it and it burns your mouth. That works too. And I'm not against that. I know I'm kind of shunning it, but I'm shunning it in comparison to having some fresh oregano in your house, and you can smell it. It smells good. Looks amazing. Who doesn't like live plants in the house? It's amazing, right? We should all start to do that. But anyways, that's that. So another question is, why are you growing cover crops? Well, one of the reasons we grow cover crops is to build organic matter. But the other thing is it's sequestering CO2. So I don't know if I'm falling for this whole CO2 thing. I know CO2 levels were higher in the past. But regardless, that's what the cover crops are doing. The main thing they're doing is they're building organic matter. The earth is like a battery. And so if you have all this diverse plants growing in it, it's like charging that battery, right? You got photosynthesis happening. You're basically getting the soil rocking, getting it going. You do this kind of in the off season, or for us, we do it before we even plant any vegetables in our soil. So once I do all that bed prep, I run cover crop through there and I let that cover crop grow and I feed that cover crop. And when I say feed it, it's not just the minerals. It's not just the sand. Like, if you really want to grow amazing, high quality food, our soils are you know what they are, and they don't have the minerals right. So you got to then add nutrition. So what's that? Well, this can go back into the answer of my book question. You could go spend money and you could go buy stuff. You could go buy kelp meal. You could buy kelp meal, crab meal, shrimp meal, fish, right? Why did I mention only the sea? Let's think about that, because you can also go buy, and this is what most people sell, blood meal, bone meal, feather meal. Guess where those come from? They're labeled organic, by the way, too. When you buy them, you kind of benign all this knowledge. They're labeled organic. So you're like, oh, organic blood meal. Oh, organic bone meal. Okay, cool. I'm going to add this to my soil. It's going to help the NPK, and there's trace minerals in there, and da-da-da-da. It's organic, so it's got to be legit, right? Well, all that crap comes from the conventional farming, guys. I don't know how they're label that shit organic. It's loaded with heavy metals, toxic stuff. I mean, it's the waste of the conventional agricultural system. Blood meal, like from pigs and cows, all conventional. So that's why I named the sea. I don't buy any of that. Don't buy that shit. I used to grow with that stuff. Then I found out where it came from. I'm like, hell no, I'm not putting that on my soil. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, no way, Jose. So, but you got to add nutrition, right? So what's that nutrition look like? You got your minerals in. Now we got to feed the soil, because what are we really feeding? We're feeding the soil food web. We got the minerals dialed in for them, and we got to feed them. So I suggest you go from the ocean, because it's the best we got. It's not perfect. It's still got issues. I know. I'm fully aware. I mean, I get it. But at least with the shrimp, the crab, the fish, it's coming from the ocean. It's not as heavily, I don't know, demonically processed and manufactured. I mean, it's that whole deal with the conventional system. You guys know that's just like Franken food. That's wacky dacky. We don't want none of that, be a part of that. And we sure as hell do not want to contribute our dollars to that industry in no way, shape, or form. If we want to see healthy food, if we want to see things change, then we can go to the ballot and vote. But we vote every day when we buy stuff, like whether we buy organic foods or not. You know, when we support these models that we can't stand, then we're just feeding back into it. And I know a lot of you guys don't do that. And I don't either. But I was doing that and didn't even know because I was buying like blood meal and bone meal. So anyways, just think about that. But you got to feed it. So you got to throw that nutrition in too. And a lot of this is I do every like season. I do like what's called a recharge, where I do like a little bit of fish, crab, shrimp. I also do alfalfa. Forgot to mention that one. And kelp. So kelp, alfalfa, shrimp, crab, and fish. Those are my favorites. I love them. Those are always in the mix. Okay? And I take those and I literally add those on top of everything else that I've already got going on in my minerals. I then take those, and based on this book, which I'm knocking out these books. Everyone needs this book. If you're going to grow food, you need this book. This is going to revolutionize how food's grown. Because once we get this the soil dialed in at that 5 years, we could use this model by itself and create a closed loop food model that can make organic food cheaper than conventional. This guy is the son of the guy who did K&F, Korean natural farming. So this is daddy, and this is his son. And he simplified daddy's work. He innovated. Beautiful books, both of them. Korean natural farming, Jadam organic farming. Amazing books. But I'll be honest, I tried to grow like this on native soil before, just like they say. It takes a long time. A lot longer than 5 years. And we don't have that much time. Let's be honest. And if you guys are actually wanting to grow food for yourselves and your family, then we're going to have to speed up that process, right? But anyways, great books. And what I was getting at with that is I added that fertilizer to the soil, okay? I added the fertilizer to the soil, but I take his recommendation to Jadam. Jadam's big on take anything, like if you want to grow tomatoes, he's like, take your tomato plants, put them in a bucket with water and native soil from the forest, and let that gestate and ferment, and that's your nutrients for your tomatoes. Tomatoes want tomatoes, and that's true. But if you're just starting out, you don't have tomatoes. You don't have any tomatoes to put in there. And so you got to grow them first. And that's the catch-22, right? Is getting there. So it's a great book, but you see the dilemma? I'm like reading this thinking I'm getting fired up, and then I'm like, wait, I don't have any of these nutrients because I don't have anything growing. And there's other solutions. But what I did is I took that kelp, fish, crab, shrimp, alfalfa, threw it in a bucket, threw it in water, threw it in soil microbes. So I used his same principles and knowledge and applied it in a totally different way that he doesn't even freaking talk about, right? It's the same thing though. Those soil microbes from my ecosystem, those probiotics, those beneficial microbes, are going to break down anything I put in that water. Anything. So I did the same thing with my minerals. And what did that do? It liquefied the nutrition. So now I can really pre-digested nutrition for the soil food web. So what I can do now is make a compost tea like y'all saw in the last 2 posts. Make a compost tea. I am saving this live, by the way. We're going to break it all up. Take your compost tea. What is compost tea? Well, the one I make is ocean minerals and indigenous probiotic bacteria and fungi from my local ecosystem, and I plume that out. So I take a small handful, which has trillions, and I put it in a big trash can, feed them potatoes and sea salt. And what happens? They flourish and grow. And I make a big 50-gallon barrel of microbes that if I was to buy would cost me probably $500-600. And I made it for pennies. Take those bacteria, take that liquid nutrition I made, and boom, throw that on the soil on top of everything I just told you to do. And this is what we have to do if we want to grow super healthy food, because you need to be adding compost tea to brand new soil, and even soil that's aged. If you're growing vegetables that are drawing minerals out and you want to grow super nutrient dense food, you have to do this, because the soils are broken, they're destroyed. And though this seems like all this work and it's super expensive, but if you just understand this concept, then you understand doing this your first 2 or 3 years, it's not going to be like all of a sudden your soul's just perfect. It still takes time. Then you start to understand how bad it really is. Because I don't know any farms on a massive scale using these methods together. And to be able to cut costs with Jadam is the only way to make this work. It would just be too expensive. And you don't want to be buying bottled nutrients or bacteria. The only thing that I would buy bacteria-wise is endomycorrhizae. And I'm not going to go into that, but it's something you would coat on your seeds. And it's endo. And the reason why it's endo is that it's basically you want these mycorrhizae to go in the roots of your plants. In, not out, in. So I say that like 8 times now because I want to emphasize that we're finding out that these bacteria live in the roots. There's a symbiotic relationship with the soil food web, yes, but there's an interconnectedness inside the plants. And then there's an exchange that the plants feed the soil food web. People think, oh, we feed the food, we feed the soil, that feeds the soil food web. The soil food web, that then helps the plants pre-digest the minerals and feeds the plants. But the plants are also feeding the soil food web. And the only healthy plants, right? So I have to elaborate on that. Only healthy plants are doing that. And that's where you get that charge that happens, where you're charging the soil and you're creating life and you're creating a system that is sustainable. And that's part of what regenerative agriculture is really about. Not a lot of people talk about it. A lot talk about regenerative agriculture, sustainable methods, and land management, like how you're managing the land. My grandpa taught me this. Endomycorrhizae. Yeah, exto. So, and because most of the mycorrhizae you buy, it'll have both, or it'll have one or the other. But really, you just need endo. If you're using local indigenous microbes from your environment, you're going to be getting all the exomycorrhizae you really need. And I truly feel like you just need to get the endo, because those, from what I've been told by a head agronomist in our nation at the forefront of this, that followed Kerry Ream's work, that followed all these guys' work, like the guys that are really standing on the shoulders of these giants, that's kind of what they've relayed to me. And all I do to do that, just let me go into that right quick, since it was a question that got brought up, is I take a little bit of this endomycorrhizae. I take my bag of seeds, my heirloom seeds, which is a question I can just lead into, and I dump it into the seed bag, and I shake it up, and it coats it, and that's it. You're done. See, and then you plant your seeds accordingly. Whether you're running through a seeder, your hand seeding them out, that's it. And what happens is when those roots sprout, boom, all those spores from that endomycorrhizae are there. They spawn out, they grow. And oh man, when you do that, your plants just grow so freaking healthy. Like, it's nuts. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, maybe I should do a little book about this. So where do you buy it? I want to answer that. I went to Soul Secrets to buy it. You can buy it anywhere. SoulSecrets.com. Genius guy out in New Mexico. Dr. Michael something. He blessed that dude's heart. He stayed on the phone for like 3 hours. I was like, I gotta go. He's like, still, no, you need to hear this. Blew my mind. That's where I got endomycorrhizae from him, but you can get endomycorrhizae pretty much anywhere. He claims his is the best. However, he mainly sells to like massive farm operations. So we just got to keep that in mind and whatnot. So anyways, that's that. Cover crops. I feel like I covered that. Just going to relapse on that. It builds organic matter, sequesters carbon. It gets the soil charging, gets it growing. SoulSecrets.com. Yeah, I believe that's it. Yes, rhizome, because it's like on the roots, right? Like the rhizomes of the roots. So where do you grow? Oh, why do you grow heirloom vegetables? So something that I feel like, going to what I was saying about really understanding all this and then it clicks, is understanding genetics. Because all the vegetables that we eat now are typically hybridized, which means they've been stabilized, they've been inbred. and that inbreeding creates stabilization in the gene pool. Well, imagine if we did that to humans and we all came out exactly the same. Well, that would be kind of freaking weird. And when people are incest, what happens? They come out looking morphed and mutated. So that's why I don't grow those seeds. So, and the thing is they're never going to say on a seed pack. Oh, actually they do. They say hybrid. They'll say F1 hybrid or hybridized seeds. But typically a seed pack won't say anything. And that's still hybrid. So unless it says heirloom, it's heirloom. And what does that mean? Well, it's open pollinated, which means all the genetic diversity of that species gets expressed, and then they just collect all the seeds and all that pollen from that seed stock. And a lot of these have been basically brought in and grown and cultivated since like the 1800s. These genetics have been around. And I truly believe that these genetics have the ability to uptake all these minerals that we're throwing on the soil. And a lot of these hybrids, they don't. They don't. And at the end of the day, just because, yeah, heirloom is open pollen. Typically, yes, it's open pollinated. That's kind of like a one-in-one thing. But typically, with the I kind of lost my train of thought. But F1 hybrids, you know, that's where we're getting most of our food. I feel like they'll grow good with little inputs. You know, they're easier to grow. They really are. I've grown them. They're easier to grow. But when you analyze them, which is something that we all need to get a part of, if you're into growing food, the Real Food Campaign, you want to be a part of that. Even if you're just a consumer of and you want the highest quality food, you can be a part of the Real Food Campaign. Even if you have a small garden in your backyard, you have a couple plants and potted plants, Real Food Campaign. Because what we're finding out is even though those plants look good and everything looks great, they have nitrates in the leaves. They're not supposed to really be up in there. There's a lot of funky going on. They're not getting the mineral density because the Real Food Campaign, we're testing it. It's the meter I keep telling you guys about. That's Real Food Campaign. So you want to be a part of that. We're a part of it. We're like the only farm in the South that's a part of it. But more farms are catching on. So, and I'm trying to get the local chapter really built up for the Biofood Nutrient Association. It's been tough. Like people just resist it. Farmers around here, they like want to keep all their stuff secret. And I think a lot of them just do a lot of shady stuff. They just get by with what they can, the least amount, because they don't make a lot of money. In their defense, like I have Crucial 4 I started, and I can be the CEO of that, and I can spend time out here. So that's my day job. A lot of these guys don't have a day job. So they don't have the resources, nor do they want to spend. They don't have the money to do all this work. And I know it could seem like kind of expensive to do all this stuff, but we have to do it. I'll do it. I'll spend all the money that I own to do it. And the thing is once we do it once, it's this initial investment, y'all. Like it only takes a little bit. It takes 5-6 years to get dialed in. You spend less and less and less and less. You do less and less and less every year. And then when you start understanding KNF and Jadam, your cost goes so low. So it weighs out. It just is a longer span of time. But if you go in and start force feeding plants, then you're going to have bug problems and all that shit's going on. But again, F1 hybrids, they don't need much nutrition to grow. The heirlooms do. And I truly believe that the heirlooms can actually uptake all this nutrition, all this sea salt, all these sea minerals, all this bacteria, and create more nutrient-dense food because the genetics haven't been tampered with. So hybridized genetics, they've been kind of tampered with in a Zarny, Frankie, foodie way. This isn't even GMO. Like I'm not even like gonna go there, like because that's just weird, right? I'm not even that obviously it's not even shouldn't even have said that word on this live video. It's not even welcome here. We gotta Om Namah Shivah that out. I'm going even to organic foods that we're eating. Look, we're raising the bar. All right, you guys want to watch something and learn how to. We're gonna take it to the next level. So we're not even gonna talk about all that because it's just there's no discussion. It's terrible for the environment and everything. But that's the thing with why I grow heirlooms, why a lot of the superfoods are heirlooms, why I'm into wild genetics, right? All these things the genetics haven't been tampered with by man in like a negative, cloning, Zarny way. That's not happening. So we stick with heirlooms, and that's why. Next question: Where can we get your produce? So right now it's at Addison, 4950 Keller Springs in Addison. But there are some things that we can ship. They're on either on the farm page. Typically, if we can ship it, it's on the main page. But that's where the stuff's at if you're interested in knowing where to get the produce. Now, I had to get another freeze dryer, so to meet up with the demand, and we're gonna start getting you guys way more freeze dried products. You know, there's a couple guys out there growing vegetables, and they're powdering them. And I really wanted to raise that bar too and just freeze dry those for you guys, because I know the minerals are in all these heirlooms. So just be on the lookout. More and more is coming. But no, the blue butterfly, the ashwagandha, the holy basil, those all come from the farm. You know, we're slowly phasing the farm in and out. So you'll notice that in some of these products, as you start to get them, you'll notice a little bit like, oh, wow, this one has really more vibrance than it's ever had. Well, that's probably because you're getting some of the farm stuff. And the reason why it's so much more vibrant is because, guys, even if I'm getting food from a blue zone, you know, and the soil's pretty well dialed in, it's nothing going to compare to what we're doing out here in this farming model, because it's all still being farmed, you know, like unless it's a wild herb. So at the end of the day, it's really going to help you guys notice the difference when you take it, because hands down, it's like I'm noticing all the stuff coming out of the soil here that gets freeze dried. It has a little bit more potency than anything I could ever buy that's organic. And the wild stuff's a little bit different, but also the fact that we're freeze drying. So more products on the launch there. Can we get these products shipped to us? Yeah, obviously that's kind of like what I assumed. I guess I assumed that, but yeah, that was the whole idea, is to get them available to you guys so I can ship them out, because I know a lot of you guys aren't in Dallas. But if you are in Dallas, you can go to the shop, and we're gonna be setting up a C of A and all that good stuff too. All right, coming on 47 minutes. Where do you get your goat milk? So we get our goat milk at NNP Farms. If you're in the area and you want it, I get tons of it, and I just send it to the shop, so it's a courier service. But you can check out NNP if you're in the area. You want to check out how they do their goats. I love the fact they're doing raw goat milk. Is it how I'm going to do raw goat milk when I get goats? No. I'm going to do it a little different. But they have a stellar product. I'm super blessed and honored to have it. So I'll leave it at that. Best farm books. So I went over a few. The Jadam. You can grab it here. Korean Natural Farming. Jadam. It's a great book. Understanding the Soil Food Web. Teaming with Microbes. That was a good read. Some of these you can get on Audible. Teaming with Microbes I would get on Audible. The Jadam book, that's like your farm Bible. You don't get an Audible of that. I don't even think they have one. Secrets of the Soul, that could be another Audible one. You know, once you read it, you'll probably give it to someone else to read, which is what I've done. The Ideal Soul 2.0, powerful book. Lots of science, lots of chemistry. Breathe deeply before you read it. Or just scan through it, whatever. Got to get that one. One of my faves, and I have many biodynamic gardening books, but this was a good one I got. Biodynamic gardening book. Love this. So one thing about biodynamics that's so cool, what we have to understand is that there's a whole science that hasn't been ever explained to us. And it's the 3D electromagnetic arc wave of magnetism. And it's the same arc wave that comes out of your heart. We all have it. It's in us. Okay? It's the same wave that comes out of the earth. And it's the same waves that are coming out of the sun. And it's known as 3D electromagnetic arc wave, right? Like a sine wave or a snake, the Kundalini. This goes deep. It's gnarly. And as you guys know, the sun, when it's in the atmosphere, it makes kind of like time. So if I was standing up, looking out in the stars, the sun would move kind of in a little like infinity sign. Well, based on where that sun is and where the earth is, there's a certain amount of electromagnetism hitting the earth, or light waves hitting the earth. And that's what creates the zodiac signs. Because based on all those different angles, right? There's certain influences that are happening that aren't happening here and there. And all the lore and all the fairy tales and all the Greek mythology and all the books in the Bible, and a lot of the other books, the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of these other sacred books, they have all this history and mythology about gods. And really all they're really talking about, guys, is this influence and how it's influencing us. And the reason that is being brought up in this farm Q&A is because of biodynamics. Because based on those influences, Steiner would say that those influences are dictating when you should tend to a certain type of plant based on the attribute you want it to manifest. So if I'm growing carrots, I want those roots of those carrots to grow, right? I don't want necessarily the tops. I'm not going to mitigate the tops. They have to be there, but I want to really nurture or put my attention into the soil based on when the roots of those carrots would have the most opportunity to flourish to their full potential, right? And if there's a time when there's an influence that's going to make the tops of the carrots grow, maybe I don't want to plant on that day. I want to plant on the day it's going to make the roots of those carrots grow. So based on that, and by the way, we have 12 months in a year, but the moon transit all 12 signs every month, right? And the planets, which also have influence, which were also gods and part of this whole story and history and lore. The reason all this is important is because it's influencing us. It's creating influence. There's a reason why they hold the election when they hold the election. There's a reason why a lot of things happen at certain times. And when you start to understand synchronism and how things can sync up, then you use these things as to have discernment. Now, if you want to feed yourself into the horoscope and go down into all that and think that that's that's witchcraft, that's sorcery. But as above, so below, the three magi followed the star of Bethlehem. They looked up, right, for a reason. So it's knowledge, it's information. We need to learn about it, just like we need to learn about our soul. We need to learn about the stars. We need to learn about where they're influencing us. And biodynamics takes that into account for plants. That's how we use it. We use the calendar. So and I highly suggest to use that calendar in that book. The other book was the Soul in the Environment, Soul's Environment book. So get started on those if you want. Those are great reads. You'll love it. All right. So I'm already at 53 minutes. Here we go. So what exactly is seawater for crops? So we use seawater to feed the microbes, but also to put minerals. So just like the minerals that you need in your body are almost identical to ocean water, we apply the ocean back on the land to remineralize it, right? So we use the Albrecht method to get in the main macro and trace elements. And then we use the seawater because it has it in such minute, lots of those books. Oh yeah. Such a minute amount in seawater. It's a tiny amount. And then we add just a cup to 50 gallons. So it's super, super diluted because you can't just add tons of salt to your soil. It is the same thing if you add a ton of one mineral to the soil. It'd lock everything out. Everything's in symbiosis. So you just have to slowly build it up. But the reason why we add that ocean water to it is because it does have all those trace elements. So cobalt's in there, molybdenum's in there, vanadium's in there. All the Ormus elements are in there. When they make Ormus, they make it out of ocean water, seawater. Why? Well, it's because ocean has all those elements inside of it. So, and we applied in a homeopathic dose, right? Just a tiny, tiny amount, but it gets applied every single week with biology. So that's why we use the ocean. Also, if you live by the ocean, you just go scoop up some water. That's pretty cheap. Last time I checked, so awesome, right? Okay. Simple advice for getting started growing food in my own backyard. Where to start? Okay, I already answered that up top. And hey, we should eat some of the dirt on our produce, right? Good bacteria or depends. The question is, should we eat the dirt on our produce? Well, if it's coming out of your garden and you're confident But like, if you're a farmer, you're an organic farmer at your local farmer's market, nothing against them. We got to support them. But if they're putting bone meal and blood meal and horse doo-doo that's been fed, the horse has been fed antibiotics, I don't know. It kind of weirds me out. I wouldn't want to eat that. I'd eat, but I would choose that over like Whole Foods or any natural grocer. But I would clean that. But my garden, I'm not. Like, I pulled the carrot out and had a bunch of dirt on it. I mean, I wash it a little bit, but I eat it. But you also got to think, like, you bite rocks and shit. Like, so I would just say you just need to know. When you work in the soil with your hands, that's when you get your biggest uptake of those probiotics. They get underneath your fingernails. You breathe them in. You bust up and working. They go into your nose. They're in the food too. But typically, you're going to cook the food. You're going to clean the food. Carrots, you're eating them raw. So if you're eating the food raw, yeah, I'd say a little bit. But I wouldn't try to make it to where you eat a whole plate of raw foods that really need to be cooked. So just things to think about. Question, why feed chickens zeolites? So we're kind of going to the chickens here. Well, and it says, why do you put them in the soil? That's a great question. Well, first off, I put zeolites in the soil because I got a lot of sand, and it's sand. The other thing, the reason is, I'm going to start with soil first, time with the chickens, is it raises what's called the EC, electrical conductivity, which is the meter I use in my soil. It's called the EC meter. A lot of people use pH pins, ppm pins. Nah, you don't need that. If you're doing science experiments, you can use that stuff. Like if you're making compost piles, it's pretty good. Figure out where your pH is. But as far as like soil health, I want to know electrical conductivity. What's the charge in the soil? What's the metabolism, right? What's the potential to allow things to move and digest and break down? Well, zeolites freaking charges it way up. So does humates, which is another thing you should add to the soil potentially, unless you're just building organic matter. But that's why I add them. Also, zeolites create basically so say I screwed up. Say I added too much of one thing, which ultimately is going to happen because these tests aren't perfect, and you might miss out on something, forget something. But zeolites, they kind of buffer everything. So they will, if something's too negatively or positively charged, they'll kind of bind that up, and they kind of create they help create homeostasis in the soil. Also, zeolites, they spray zeolites on Chernobyl from radiation. So we know there's like some heavy metal bonding that it does. We know it bonds radioactive material. And this kind of goes into remediation. So putting zeolites on the soil, multiple reasons. It does help remediate the soil. It does help lock out all the nasty stuff that you probably that might be in your soil that you don't want in your soil. Helps charge the soil, and it helps add structure to the soil. And so, yeah, and you can get zeolites really cheap. Like people that sells, there are no companies that sell zeolites in these little powders to us. And it's like $30-$40 a bag. It's a joke, man. You can get zeolites bulk. What I would suggest on where to get it is just look at zeolites near me and find the closest spot. There's a mine, I think, in Idaho. There's another zeolite mine somewhere else. I think that's in Idaho. That's near Mr. Matt Blackburn. He needs to get him some zeolites. But yeah, so that's what I would do with the zeolites. Why I feed them to chickens? Pretty much the same reason why you would take it as a human. Heavy metal detox or binding, and then you release that out. That's the main reason why. It just keeps the chickens healthy, helps charge them. I feel like there's probably some EC benefits, electrical conductivity charge for them as well. But yeah, that's the main reason why. It's just more of a preventative to make sure that the chickens, if they are getting exposed to anything from fallout from the sky, which I didn't even mention, that's going on. We're getting hit with a lot of stuff. So zeolites, I feel like, can take care of that and keep the soil charged. Yep, spelled it right. Zeolite. Yep, that looks right. I'm terrible at spelling, but that looks right. All right, so 59 minutes and perfect. So we're good. And I got to answer some of these other questions, I think, too. And Heirloom I'm gonna just go scroll through this. If you made a book about this, I would buy. Cool. Well, if I did a book, I'd probably just give it away. But yeah, I should do that. You have a PDF? No, I don't. Sorry. Yeah, the information's just basically all emerging all these ideas and innovating and bringing them together. And then how can I apply it to my soil? So taking the knowledge of like Secrets of the Soil, glacial rock dust, getting those minerals in, that's real important, right? And then the idea of biology to help break down those minerals. And that's the main thing we're trying to do here with the farming. And then using the right genetics is important. So the food that we eat can actually uptake those minerals. Getting part of the Real Food Campaign, really important, because that campaign is a non-profit, okay? It's a non-profit company. They're developing a meter for everyone to have in your smartphone. And this Corona thing really threw a wrench in that organization. We were humming, and things just got cattywampus with this whole pandemic shit. And so I just want to start putting that info out there. A Real Food Campaign, really important. We support them. You can donate to them. That's awesome. Even if you're just growing some plants in some pots, you can be a gardener and be a part of the program, and they will get you a kit, and you can send in your samples, and they'll tell you how much nutrition's in your plants. It's really expensive to do those tests. They're doing those tests for free because what they're doing is, and the reason why they're doing that is they're creating a database. We have the meter. We have the technology. It can read things, but it doesn't make sense unless we have data to reference it. So we know what we currently have and what's good and what's good and what's bad, right? So the idea is that like once we understand all the food that's available to us, now we can create a range and what the data actually means, right? So if we're just take this meter out and you test it right now, it's going to show you a bunch of numbers, but they're not going to make any sense to you because you don't have anything to reference them to. But if you have all this data and say you're at a farmer's market and you got multiple vendors there with carrots, scan his carrots. His carrot scored a 70. His carrot scored a 30. His carrot scored 100, right? Like a scale, right? 1 through 100. Those are the best carrots. Buy those carrots. They're going to give you the most nutrition. And what this will do is change the food system, guys, because now all these big companies will have to adhere to everything I'm telling you. Because a lot of these methods are not just mine. They're my mentors, merging them all together, really focusing on nutrient density. So that's the kind of the idea with it all. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this. I'm going to go ahead and jet, because like I said, an hour, and I want to keep going, but I think I got all the questions. So thank you guys so much for watching. You guys rock. I'm going to save this. It's going to get saved. We're going to chop it up and put it out there for you guys. So don't worry if you want to be able to like go back and watch it. And if you wanted me to go into deeper into some of these areas, I tried to, I can do that and we can answer those again. So I pretty much got almost all these farm questions answered. So I'm so happy. Yay. I feel like I'm giving you guys the value you deserve. All right. Signing off. Charles Barber here with Crucial 4. Thanks again.